Di ini Bu, yang di server,
Iya.
di ruang server.
Aku tak tulis ketua STI aja ya, yayasan, ketua yayasan aja ya. Sudah pada masuk sudah.
Iya, udah saya admin Bu.
Berarti linknya segera di-share aja, Bram, biar pada ini.
Ibu ketua yayasan ya, saya ganti ya? Gimana?
Tak ganti aja sendiri.
Sama saya ganti Bu. Iya. Iya Bu. Kita udah launch ke ini ya Bu ya, ke YouTube ya.
Ya.
Saya send dulu via email.
Pak,
Halo Mbak Santi,
Bu,
sudah bisa kok Mbak?
Assalamualaikum Bu.
saya gambarnya hanya ini aja, apa tadi yang saya sampaikan Bu Teri.
Poster ya? Iya ini memang masih poster kok.
Assalamualaikum Bu.
Waalaikumsalam ya Pak Yanto.
Sehat Bu.
Alhamdulillah ya Pak. Ini sudah ada yang hadir yang memang belum dimulai Mbak, masih poster gambarnya.
Oh gitu, karena jadwalnya kan jam berapa tadi? Jam
9.30.
Oh 9.30. Oh iya iya. Dan
Belum.
tak nunggu dulu, saya tak nanti masuk lagi Bu ya, tak masuk dulu.
Ya Mbak.
Iya kasih.
Selamat pagi Pak Yanto, Bu Teri.
Ya, idam ya.
Ya, di YouTube juga sudah mulai banyak yang hadir Pak.
Belum hadir ya.
Jadi kita live streaming di YouTube.
Oke. Pesertanya banyak nih, ada yang dari Taiwan ya, Dang?
Ya, jadi nanti untuk Zoom dan YouTube itu pada saat jam 9.30 akan kami share daftar hadirnya, Pak. Jadi acuan sertifikat itu di link tersebut, gitu, Pak.
Itu ya.
Ya, selamat datang untuk Bapak Ibu peserta webinar internasional IPWIJA. Semoga selalu diberikan kesehatan
Amin.
dan keselamatan bagi keluarga semua.
Amin. Kita posting di grup keluarga itu mah, biar pada ikut.
Halo, Assalamualaikum.
Insyaallah.
Assalamualaikum
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semuanya. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Alhamdulillah Bapak Ibu kita bisa bertatap muka kembali melalui ikon ini face to face ya.
Terima kasih Pak Tejo.
Mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu sehat semuanya.
Amin.
Amin. Bapak dari institusi mana, Pak?
Ini adalah sesi minggu ketiga ya. Kita masih melanjutkan sesi tentang pembuatan dari audio ya. Kemarin tugasnya
Ini Pak Tejo salah masuk ini, Dam.
Oh iya, Bu.
audio, kemudian diinsertkan atau diincludekan.
Bentar, Bu. Tadi Pak Tejo ya, Bu ya?
Sutejo ya.
Siapa tadi? Pak Tejo siapa, Bu?
Nggak tahu, tahu ngisi tentang apa tadi? Membuat apa?
Tapi dia peserta daftar di 100 itu kali, Dang.
Udah keluar, Pak.
Hah?
Udah keluar beliau.
Oh,
Apa yang lain coba?
Kenapa keluar, Dang?
Enggak, kayaknya beliau narasumber kali, Pak, di tempat lain.
Narasumber di tempat lain dikirain kita.
Terus salah mengklik linknya, Pak.
Karena banyak link ya.
Iya.
Kayak kemarin kita salah kamar ya, Bu Teri ya. Tapi di daftar tuh ada nama Sutejo nggak yang 100, Dang?
Daftar dulu gimana caranya? Apa?
Saya cek ya, Pak.
Pak Yanto nyapa yang lain dulu coba.
Iya. Ada pada dari kampung ya, Bu ya?
Iya.
Udah ini ada.
Di mana tadi kalau boleh?
Ya, sebentar, Bu.
Ini.
Bapak Ibu mohon izin apabila nanti sudah mulai acaranya, admin akan mengklik mute untuk semua partisipan kecuali narasumber, host, dan moderator. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum Bapak Ibu.
Waalaikumsalam.
Baru 10 yang bergabung ya, Pak ya. Selamat pagi Pak Sony.
Pagi Pak Yanto.
Sehat Pak Sony.
Alhamdulillah sehat.
Selamat pagi Pak. Bu, selamat pagi Bu Isti.
Pagi Pak Yanto.
Yeah. Pak Mesman selamat pagi.
Iya.
Yeah,
Kok nggak ada videonya ya saya ya?
Oh iya.
Nggak ada videonya Pak.
Bentar.
Nah, ini nanti pakai
Oh Bu.
pendaftarannya. Udah sekarang proses pendaftarannya Pak.
Nanti dikasih formulir kehadiran Ibu.
Oh gitu.
Yeah,
Oh baik
gitu.
Pak.
Yeah.
Baik, berarti ini saya tutup dulu atau gimana?
Nggak apa-apa Ibu bergabung nggak apa-apa.
Oh iya. Soalnya kan 9.30 mulainya ya. Biasanya ada pendaftaran dulu berapa menit sebelumnya gitu.
Oke, boleh. Nanti pendaftarannya Idam tolong di-share Idam.
Iya, Pak. Baik, Pak.
Ya biar peserta mengisi formulir ya Bu ya. Karena nanti formulir itu buat sertifikat Ibu.
Daftar hadir ya, Pak.
Oke.
Oh
Selamat
iya.
pagi Pak Abdul
Formulir
Karim.
Ada pengiriman formulir misalnya kayak Google Form gitu toh?
Oke, lagi mau dikirim, Bu.
Oh gitu, baik.
Gitu, oke.
Ya,
Tunggu,
makasih banyak.
Bu. Makasih, oke.
Ya.
Makasih, Bu Isti.
Oke, sami-sami.
Tindak lanjuti kerjasamanya.
Ya, sudah saya
Oke,
share ya,
semoga
Bapak Ibu.
sukses Pak.
Daftar hadir.
Udah di-share tuh, Bapak Ibu. Tinggal bisa ngisi, Bapak Ibu.
Di chat ya, chat Zoom.
Di chat itu, Bu. Di chat di apa Zoom-nya ya. Selamat pagi, Pak Abdul Karim. Selamat pagi, Pak Yudhistira. Pak Asafrialdi. Oh, masih di mute ya. Selamat pagi, Pak Miswan.
Wah, terima kasih cantik.
Yang di YouTube juga udah di-share kan, Dam ya? Formulirnya, Dam. Selamat pagi, Pak Ahmad Nuraya.
Well, ini tanya dulu. Ini mute apaan? Mute ya betul. Mute kan? Terus ini berarti gambar ibu yang di sana foto. Enggak, muka ibu kayaknya. Oh gitu. Kan ini start video baru start. Iya berarti kan video ini. Lah kalau kayak gini kan baru video stop video. Oh, berarti ini video. Sekarang video berarti. Ya kan? Kalau kayak gini berarti ini nggak ada foto ibu. Kalau kayak gini baru foto ibu. Oh kalau gini foto ibu. Kalau ini itu video ibu. Kalau nggak ada gambarnya. Nah kalau posisi sekarang nggak ada gambarnya. Nah yes. Berarti sekarang foto ibu di Gmail dong. Ini ibu masukin lewat Gmail. Ya udah. Tapi biasa itu di sini. Tapi ini foto ibu nih. Oh gitu. Tapi itu nggak ada apa.
Good morning, Mr. Leroy.
Yanto, selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
Okay, thank
forgot,
you.
I forgot to.
Welcome to Indonesia.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you yesterday. Is this supposed to be suit and tie, and you are not wearing one, Sonny? Also, so I feel good.
Okay.
What are you wearing, Leroy?
My Hawaiian batik, my aloha shirt.
That's nice. That's what I'm wearing now. I can't see you though. Where's your photo? I can't see.
I'm here. Yanto can see me.
Yeah, I can see him also. Bisa Mas, udah ada kok. You are.
I think there's something wrong with my.
We can see you, Sonny.
Yeah.
With all those books behind your head.
All right. Let me get out of here first, and I think I have to revise or to update my system here. Let me see.
Yanto, where are you? Are you Jakarta?
Yeah, he is in Jakarta.
Jakarta.
I am Sonny's sister. I am Mr. Hollenberg.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you.
Oh yes, I can see you now.
Thank you. Yeah. So what time is it in your place?
Terry is chairman of the chairperson of the Yayasan.
Yeah, it says
the foundation.
Ketua Yayasan. Good for you.
Yayasan, yes.
It's almost 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday.
Yeah. 7:30. Oh, so 14 hours different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it dark already or still?
The sun is just setting, so it's still a little bit of daylight, but not too much. Maybe another 15 minutes.
Okay, so we call it Maghrib in Islam. Maghrib.
Yeah.
Is it Maghrib time in there right now?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, that's great. It's longer daytime. The daytime is longer than nighttime.
Yeah, we now have sunrise 5 o'clock, sunset 8 o'clock. So we now have 15 hours of daylight.
15 hours. Oh,
yeah.
It's spring, right? No,
Yes.
it's spring or going to summer.
Summer will be 21 June.
Summer 21 June.
21 June. Lockdown.
So Teddy, you're in Jakarta.
We are in Jakarta, yeah.
How is Jakarta? How's the COVID treating you guys?
So Jakarta.
Yeah, I hope it's going down, but seemingly it's still up.
Yeah. We have a project in Gresik, Manyar, East Java, and it's getting worse there.
Gresik.
Gersik is
Yeah,
Yeah,
Java.
Java is getting worse.
yeah, yeah.
We don't
Too
know
bad,
why.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't know why. Well, Jakarta is slowing down, but in
Java
East Java
is going up.
rising. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Nice.
Hi, good morning.
Ya,
Mani.
Pak Diki, selamat pagi.
Selamat
Ya.
pagi, Bu.
Ya.
Apa kabar Pak Diki?
Baik, Pak Asianto.
Ya, ini Mr. Leroy sudah bergabung.
Oh,
Hi, Leroy.
Dicky, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What time now in the United States?
Phoenix, 7:30 p.m. Wednesday.
Okay, that's a good time for you after dinner.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, I think some of my students from Freeport also joining.
Oh,
Your student in IPB from Freeport?
Yes, because we have a special class at Tembagapura for business. So we have around 36 students, but I don't know how many students will joining.
PhD.
wow.
For master students.
Oh, master student.
Master students. At least I gave the link to my student that work for the thesis. At least they can also see the director from Freeport Ignorance.
Great.
I was in Tembagapura last February before the lockdown.
So was I.
Oh, you were there as well on
I
February?
was in Tembagapura February 16, 17, 18.
I think that's also the same time with me.
We were staying at the senior guest house. We had a review of our risk register.
Ah, okay. Well, I was there, and I also went to the mile.
Yeah. Good for you.
Well, yes, indeed. Well, I supposed to go there by the end of this June for another class, but due to Corona, we hold everything and everything online. So the course and also the supervision for thesis also online.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dicky, we've been told probably not this year we can return, maybe next year.
That's true. That's true. That well, even in Indonesia, not many of us really follow the government's order for mobility restrictions, but for our own safety, it's better not to travel until next year.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, maybe until December and
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's let's see until December. Just keep monitor.
yeah, maybe on January 2020 2021 is clear and clean COVID pandemic maybe.
Well, personally, I'm not sure because the disease is always there. Disease is always there. But how we create our countermeasures, mitigations, everything, that's what makes difference. Because I think, for instance, like HIV, since 1920 and outbreak in 1980 until now, there is no vaccine at all. But we managed to live with and mitigate everything, right?
That is true. That is true. And you know, we all are subject to the flu.
For sure.
Just the flu biasa, and there's a vaccine, but you know, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't.
Yes.
But it certainly doesn't make us immune. We can always get the flu.
Yes. That's good.
So it'll be interesting to see when the vaccine for COVID comes out, how effective it's going to be. That's true.
Well, yeah, frankly speaking, our immune is getting better, usually after several years, right?
That's true too.
And based on our DNA sequencing, each or our own DNA has memorized around 150 types of flu strains. So we are developing. We have the disease, right? So the difference is with the SARS-CoV-2 because they are vulnerable, but they are very smart to maintain the proteins. So basically, virus is very vulnerable. Even with detergents, they can be vanished easily, but somehow they can utilize the protein, the amino from our body, so to protect themselves. That's the challenge that I think many researchers face.
Can I, before we start, Dickie, can I ask you a question because you seem to be very knowledgeable? Way back in March, April, when the global pandemic was starting to spread, and they had color coding for the world, almost all of the dark colors for COVID were in the Northern Hemisphere and very few in the Southern Hemisphere. That seems to be beginning to change. There seems to be outbreaks now in Mexico, South America, Southern Africa, et cetera. Does the weather make a difference, summer, winter?
Well, personally, we discussed it also amongst virologists. It's not really make a difference, but what makes difference is people movements. That's the difference during the winter and the summers.
Sure.
And also, I think it was happening during the winter breaks, right?
Yes.
People more close to each other.
Got it.
And before summers, people start to already have a physical distancing.
Yep.
So I look at the publications concerning about the weather. The funniest thing in this scientific publication, they are excluding Wuhan case. So for me, it's a bias. So it's no such a real evidence yet to say that weather can really matter or influencing factors.
Mr. Diki?
Yes.
In your present, Professor Indra Jaya. Good morning, Professor Indra Jaya.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, how are you?
Good morning to everyone.
Yes.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Indra Jaya.
Thank you, Professor Indra.
Yeah, thank you.
Professor Indra is my good friend.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very good friend.
Good friend.
We went to the States together when we were doing AFS program.
Okay.
I forgot. Where did you go, Indra?
I went to Oregon,
right?
Oregon State, yeah. Oregon, yeah.
Oregon.
Yes, Oregon.
Selamat pagi, Prof. Indra. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, Pak Diki.
Sehat, Prof.
Ketemu seniornya, Pak Indra Diki.
Ya.
Ya, Prof. Indra yang mensupport kami di awal COVID outbreak.
Oke. Prof. Indra Jaya, salam buat Prof. Arif Satria.
Baik, Pak. Ya,
Pak Sony, ini sudah jam 9.30, mau kita mulai Pak Sony, tadi baru 31.
Maybe we wait for another 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Sure.
5 minutes.
No problem.
5 minutes. We can just have a discussion, informal discussion. According to our list, there are about 250 participants sign up for this one.
Yes, 100 in Zoom meeting and 150 in outside
YouTube. Yeah, nice.
YouTube, yeah.
So it's nice to see all these from all different backgrounds.
Is anybody from the US, Sunny?
No, I don't think so. You're the only one. I'm not sure.
The Pastor
Professor Indra is looking good. You're muting. We cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I just unmute myself. Thank you very much.
Ya.
Oke, siapa lagi yang udah ada nih?
Ya. Baru 31 nih Pak. Mungkin koneksi mungkin Pak Sony.
Oke.
I think most of them was directed to YouTube link rather than Zoom.
Oh, really?
Is there a way to monitor YouTube at the same time?
Yes. I think many of them receive email from IPWIJA to look at the YouTube link.
Yeah, YouTube link.
Well, in this case, Pak Yanto, maybe we can start. I suggest.
Yeah. Start now, Mr. Sony.
Please.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yeah, good morning. The Honorable Chairman of the Board of Trustee of the Jakarta Foundation, Mr. Insinyur Hari Marsono, MR, PhD, and the Honorable Chairman of the Jakarta IP Foundation, Mrs. Dr. Sirestari Prasilowati, Ibu Terry. Dear seminar speakers, Mr. Leroy Hollenberg, Master of Science from Arizona State University, School of Sustainability, United States of America. Welcome Indonesia, Mr. Leroy. Yeah. He is a Director Social Responsibility and Community Development Freeport McMoran, United States of America. Mr. Diki, Raten Diki Indrawan, PhD. He is lecturer at School of Business IPB University, as well as IPWIJA International Webinar Participant. The seminar is free and all participants will be given e-certificate from the committee after filing out attendance. Setelah semua mengisi formulir kehadiran seminar. Participant is from University of Indonesia. Many lecture from university. This is student PhD from Taiwan Technical University, and then Polytechnic from East Java, West Java, all seluruh Indonesia, and then banking school. Good morning. First of all, let us all say grateful of the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the Almighty God, the most beneficent and the merciful. With His permission, today we can all get together in online conference, webinar international, to jointly attend the international webinar event organized by IPWIJA School of Business and Economic Science with the theme Managing Social Impact of COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2020, almost all countries in the world, or 213 countries are facing the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, including our beloved country, Indonesia. The COVID pandemic struck the nation very quickly, sangat cepat. Not only is the number of positive cases continuing to grow, but also the impact of spread of the coronavirus from China, maybe, is also widespread. All activities, community spread are limited. Of course, this has the impact of various sector, both economic, maybe social, politics, education, and so on. In response to this, government of Indonesia set budget of 405.1 trillion IDR to anticipate various possibilities to COVID-19 in Indonesia. A series policies we have to also been taken to the elevate to public and business facing COVID-19. The government has three main policies the handling COVID. The first, focus on health sector against corona. The first. And second, social safety net to help the community. The third, economic survival for the foundation of the Indonesia economy. One of the policies, the guide good of the policy is tax relief, jadi pengurangan pajak, increase the relation the business what emit to proceed of the Pelgu. Without tax relief, ya tanpa pengurangan pajak, the business community is fear to have the large impact of the could have worse advice the effects of termination of employment, pengangguran ya. In additional, the government policy is also expected to support the business what to continue operate the in meeting the needs of the community. Bapak Ibu yang berbahagia, the government is preparing support the business what throughout the close coordination with the Bank of Indonesia, with the Financial Sector Authority, Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, OJK, with the National Banking for how the business sector, a real sector can survive even if they are not carrying out economic activities. Ladies and gentlemen, responding to the mentioned above, today on Tuesday, June 4, 2020, our campus IPWIJA School of Business and Economic Science online international webinar via Zoom and live streaming YouTube. The presenting speaker from Arizona State University, Mr. Leroy Hollenberg, and Mr. Raden Diki Indrawan, PhD, from lecture at School Business IPB University Bogor. Will be a guide moderator by Mr. Insinyur Hari Miarsono, PhD. He is chairperson of Board of Trustee of the IPWIJA Foundation. The terms rise in international webinar is managing social impact of COVID-19. Finally, congratulations on participant in international webinar and series of the supporting activities. Let us hope the participant will be able to these activities to become again of change and educate others communities in the effort of the address and the impact of COVID-19, and thank you. And in the name of Almighty Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I Chairman of IPWIJA School of Business and Economic Science, proudly open this international webinar. Okay, thank you. IPWIJA School of Business and Economic Science is Smart Generation Choice, pilihan generasi cerdas, with as managerial and entrepreneurship. Bapak Ibu yang berbahagia, IPWIJA memiliki visi misi manajerial dan kewirausahaan dan kampus pilihan generasi cerdas. Mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu yang bergabung di sini, terutama para pembicara, Mr. Leroy Hollenberg, thank you. Welcome in Indonesia, Mr. Leroy Hollenberg.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Raden Diki Indrawan, the speaker from Business School Institute Pertanian Bogor University, and then Professor Indra Jaya, Pak Sony, Ibu Terry, and all lecture from IPWIJA, student, maybe alumni from IPWIJA. Thank you for your attendance in the seminar, and have a good seminar and discussion today. Thank you. Monggo Pak Tony.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here in this seminar. But before I continue this, I'd like to make a small correction what Pak Yanto just mentioned about Pak Leroy. Pak Leroy is not from Arizona State University.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I will introduce to him. I will introduce about him in a second. So let me once again to welcome Pak Leroy. It is a pleasure to be here, and this is probably the first webinar that IPWIJA is conducting. We are looking forward to another seminar like this, and with maybe different topics. But let's see how it goes. But it seems like we have received many requests and participants from the audience. And also, I'd like to welcome Pak Yuniarto Prastyo. He's also the member of Board of Trustees. So I hope I don't miss anybody else. But this is a very good opportunity for us to discuss about the current issues, not just in Indonesia but also all over the world. As we all know that COVID-19 has had a lot of impacts on our life, on our culture, our economy, our social life, and so on. And we all know that. And in fact, everybody is now have been working from home, most of us anyway. And this is such a new style, a new life. So I don't know how long it will last, but I will let Pak Leroy and Pak Diki to discuss further about this COVID. I'd like to introduce a bit about Leroy Hollenberg. He's my friend from. I've known him 22 years ago when we were in Freeport. Pak Leroy was born in Michigan and raised in Florida. He's currently the Director of Social Responsibility and Community Development of Freeport-McMoRan, responsible for providing advice and guidance on community programs. Pak Leroy and his wife, Ibu Pelomena, currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, where Freeport headquarters is located. As Freeport-McMoRan is a public listed company. The abbreviation is FCX, a leading international mining company. Freeport operates large, long-lived assets with significant proven and probable reserve of copper and gold. One of the assets is located in Papua, which is one of the world's largest copper and gold deposits. Pak Leroy has over 40 years of experience throughout Asia and the Pacific region, of which 35 years in Indonesia, working in a number of organizations and companies. His first job in Indonesia was USAID Provincial Development Program in Nusa Tenggara Barat. He was working with Bapeda on implementing economic development projects in agriculture, fisheries, small-scale industry on Lombok and Sumbawa. It was in early 1980. After that, I think he liked Indonesia so much that he did not want to go back to United States. So he did. After that, he was offered to of organizations and companies. Like he was the CEO of John Fawcett Foundation, a Bali-based eye care NGO providing free cataract surgeries. He was the Senior Economic Affairs UN CAPSA in Bogor. This is United Nations Center for Alleviation of Poverty through Sustainable Agriculture. Also, he was the chief of party USAID funded a project called Development of Foundation for Local Governance Innovation. And also he was the senior manager of PT Freeport Indonesia, where he spent, what, maybe 10 years or 15 years? 16 years. Okay. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this over to Leroy. Oh, before that, also, Pak Leroy obtained his Bachelor of Science in Resources Development in Michigan State University and master's degree in Resources Economic from University of Hawaii. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Pak Leroy. Thank you. Pak Leroy.
Sunny, thank you. Well, I'm waiting for your technician to load my presentation. I just want to thank you, Sunny, and Dr. Terry for giving me this opportunity. It actually feels like I am back in Indonesia, just like Pak Yanto said when we started our call, when he said, Selamat kembali, selamat datang lagi ke Indonesia. So thank you, Sunny, thank you, Terry. And I look forward to the next hour and a half talking about what has become a very, very major and serious pandemic that is touching, as Pak Yanto mentioned, 213 countries and billions of people. So if you're ready, Sunny, has the presentation?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't see it yet, so I'm assuming.
Can you? Somebody.
If you can, oh, there it is. No, I can share my screen if you want me to.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
There it is. No.
There it is. It's coming. There it is. Yes.
Got it.
Okay. Good.
Put it. If you can, put it on slideshow so that we can see the whole screen. At the bottom, there's a little icon for. This is fine. This is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, I don't have all the answers. What I want to do is to talk to all of you who are joining today about my experience with this pandemic from the eyes of my current position as a private sector specialist, there you go, private sector director for Freeport. But I want to talk more in general about how the private sector has been involved, how this has affected us all, and try to end at least on somewhat of a positive note if I can. So there's no question that COVID-19 surprised us all last December. It started out as a significant health crisis, probably the most significant health crisis in the lives of all of us who are, at least in the millennial age and below. But it's now become a global economic and social crisis as well. Next. We got the next slide.
Thanks.
I hope.
What?
Please move the window. Only the one can control it there, Sunny. So.
Can you?
I cannot.
Okay.
If I were to upload my program, I could try to upload my program and then I could share the screen. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's slide 2.
Yeah.
Keeping in the theme of this webinar, the pandemic has affected and challenged all of the progress that has been made throughout the world when we talk about social inclusion, when we talk about equity, we talk about equality. And on this slide, these are how 4 major areas have been affected. There's a very large vulnerable population throughout the world. And again, I'm mostly going to talk about the US. And because of the pandemic, these people are even more vulnerable. There was a large group of people throughout every single country that lives in poverty. These people are now more impoverished because of COVID-19. The elderly and persons with disabilities even have more challenges today in the crisis of the COVID-19 compared to before. And one that I'm very close to because I've lived so many years in Indonesia and now working a bit with Native Americans here in the US are the indigenous populations who find their lives, which were already difficult, even more difficult. Next slide. If we can. We all, look, I'm not going to tell you anything new. We all know how we got here to where we are, where 213 countries are now at some level or another experiencing this pandemic. It took one person in December of last year that became infected. And because of our human nature to be collective, our human nature to be social, our human nature to be very global, and even more so now because of airline traffic being so easy and so relatively cheap. In addition, comorbidities where people have more than just one illness, people suffering from asthma, people suffering from various other diseases and health conditions, combined with, there are some of us, certainly in the US, who say, who me, I can't get it, I'm too young. I'm immortal. I can't get this disease and I won't spread it to anybody else. And this, certainly in the US, when we look back at the data, the first case of COVID was actually in the state of Washington way back at the end of January. The second case was in my state, Arizona, in February. And then in March, we had about 15 cases. And now we have almost 2 million cases in the United States in just 3 months. Next slide. If we can, next slide. So what's been the impact in the US? And then quickly go to the next one. Okay, number one. We have statistics that are gathered every month in terms of the number of people that are jobless. And at the end of May, 40 million people had lost their jobs and were applying for unemployment here in the US. And that has created what you'll see in all the red text. These people are now facing financial hardship. These people have lost work and or have reduced hours and as a result, reduced pay. Combined with this is job insecurity. There's a term here called furlough, which I think is also applicable in Indonesia, where people are let off with the indication that they will come back, but they are laid off work without any pay and without knowing when they're going to come back to work, if at all. Next. Next slide. If we can. The second major group to be hit hard were women. In the US, at least, if not more than 50% of all people working are women. 60 million women, and in particular 60 million women who are single mothers in the US are now out of work. Combined with a number of schools that have closed because they just cannot teach under conditions of distance in the classroom, et cetera, has created women to stay at home. Therefore, they are unemployed and they become their own caregivers to their children, which is the way it used to be many, many decades ago. But now, because women are such a large majority of the workforce, childcare facilities are very important so that women can leave their children at these facilities while they are working. These are closed. So we now have these women alone who are now facing uncertain unemployment. Next. We've got people in the US now who have to make a decision, especially those that have been out of work. Which is more important? How do I prioritize my family's well-being and my family's welfare? Do I pay bills? Do I pay rent? Do I pay my utilities? or do I buy food to feed my family? What has happened is, in my case, all of us here in Phoenix at the office, and there at one time were about 600 of us, and now there's about 400 of us. We are all working from home. But what about those millions and millions of workers who cannot work from home because they're just not set up in the offices to be able to have their workers be able to work from home? Grocery stores, taxi drivers, truck drivers, etc. You also have people that, because they're not earning an income anymore, are selling their own personal assets. They're going into their savings accounts. They're even taking loans, short-term loans, just to be able to buy the food and to pay the bills. And we have here in Phoenix, we've relied recently on an app called Instacart. Instacart, and there's another one called Postmates. They will deliver food for you. You can go online and order food through Instacart at a grocery store, and they will deliver it to your door. You can go online and to a restaurant and order food from a restaurant, and they will deliver it to your door. But people are required to work in these places in their cars to bring the food to you and to go to the stores. They are exposing themselves as well to this virus. So there's a potential vicious cycle as people try to continue being employed, but in employment opportunities that do not 100% keep them immune from catching the COVID-19. Next. So we talked about this, and look, you're beginning to talk about the new normal in Indonesia as well. Our life as normal has been put on hold. Working from home is not normal. Even in Indonesia, we get up in the morning to go to work. We work in the office 8-9 hours a day. We then come home and we sometimes relax or work from home, but just only for an hour or two. Now we're working at home 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. Another thing that has happened is that food supply chains have been disrupted. You may have seen in the news here in the US that there are meat factories and there are poultry factories that produce a lot of meat and chicken products for consumption. Those facilities have some of the highest rates of COVID-19. Therefore, the amount of food coming out of those facilities is less. You may have seen stories of farms where there are milk and dairy cattle having to throw their milk away because there's no market. That's all been a consequence of these supply chain disruptions and the inability of people to be able to carry on their life as normal and make purchases as normal. And the last one is the uncertainty of daily routines. Are we allowed to go out and exercise? Can we go out and walk our dog? What can we do in terms of going shopping, et cetera? All of this now has changed. For example, last Sunday afternoon, 4 days ago, the governor of Arizona decided that the entire state of Arizona was going to be on curfew from 8 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning for 1 week. You cannot be outside, you cannot be on the street. However, if you need to go to the supermarket, you can go to the supermarket. If you need to go to a drive-in McDonald's or something, you can still do that. But basically, we are now in lockdown from 8 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning until next Monday. Next. So how do we manage this impact going forward? And this is just a side impact that I want to just show before we go into what some of the mitigation measures are, et cetera. You've got unemployment that leads to isolation. Those of us working at home and those people who even do not have a job and are stuck at home because they can't go out for fear of getting the virus. Some people are then going into a state of depression. You then have potential for increased rates of domestic abuse in the household because parents are spending a lot more time, partners are spending a lot more time with each other. And as a result, there may be an increase in the number of deaths that are not directly related to COVID, but are indirectly related to COVID. So this is one of the side impacts that we're now seeing, having been experiencing this pandemic for the last 3.5 months. Next. So what's been the private sector response? And I'm just going to give some examples. Next slide. What I have seen, and I've met I was in Indonesia the last time in February, just when this was beginning to hit. What I've seen is a pattern of detection, containment, and then mitigation. And what many companies are doing in the private sector is they are implementing very rigorous detection procedures. They're doing temperature screenings before you walk into buildings and other protection protocols, which some of the most important of which are social or physical distancing and wearing of masks. The next one is we get through the point where we now know who the COVID positive patients are, we contain that. And then we start implementing some mitigation protocols where we isolate them or they're in hospitals being treated, followed by rigorous testing to make sure we know exactly who has it, those tracing of people so that we know one person contacts 2, contacts 4, contacts 16, and then it just keeps exploding. How do we limit that contact through tracing? I know Freeport, as an example, is using employee rotations in areas where there is a high concentration of workers, where non-essential workers are being moved out of the production site, but they're not being laid off. They're just being moved to allow more space between employees. And it's part of an essential team initiative. And what that does is it reduces density as well as the spread of the virus. I can give you some numbers, for example, because we follow these every day. The province of Papua now has over 800 positive cases of COVID, and about 20% of those have recovered, and there's been relatively few deaths. I think it's about 1.5%. If you look at the district of Mimica, there's been about 270 cases, of which over 100 have recovered, which is a recovery rate of close to, I think it's about 29% when you do the numbers. And if you look at where the Freeport activities are located in Tumagapura and Kuala Kencana, out of those, that's the 200 cases. We have almost a 50% recovery rate, and it's been tragic, but there's been 3 deaths that have been reported in the press. So the testing, the isolation, the training, the tracing, the essential team initiatives have worked to reduce the density and reduce the spread. We also now have 2 PCR machines that are testing all cases throughout the entire province, not just Mimica. Next. And now we have to do some resilience building. What do all companies need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Prioritize worker health and safety. Monitor company community interface. Many companies, certainly in Indonesia, have workers that go back and forth between company operations and community life. And in COVID areas, that has to be monitored very, very carefully. And for the long term, through tracing, through isolation, we should be able to get a handle on this over hopefully a near-term period of time. And then we have to beef up the supply chains, beef up the workforces and the communities so that they are more and more protected from this terrible virus. Next. So we got to prepare ourselves. It doesn't matter whether it's a virus, a typhoon, gempa bumi, or a tsunami. We need to understand the impact on those most at risk, and we need to invest in our workers, that they have access to financial resources and educate them in the workplace, literacy on, training on literacy and savings, health and hygiene, and respect and avoidance of workplace violence. Next. I have a couple of final thoughts here. All of you know now in the US, about 9 days ago, an African-American was killed during a police confrontation in the state of Minnesota. And that has led to civil unrest and protests throughout the entire United States for the last 9 days. You see many, many people wearing masks, but what is anticipated is that there will be a second spike going forward in the next, say, a week to 10 days, 14 days, because of the hundreds of thousands of people that have been in close contact with one another over the last 9 days. And with all the asymptomatic cases out in the crowds, one will never know whether you've contracted the virus or not. So it's tragic that George Floyd passed away the way he did, and everybody respects the right to protest and to get justice. But it probably will lead to an increase in the number of positive cases of COVID in the United States over the next few weeks. And the second final thought is, next slide. I've already mentioned this, recovery rates are increasing, the curves are starting to flatten and go down. More and more people are practicing the safe protocols of physical distancing and social distancing. We see people wearing masks everywhere. I was talking with the professor just before we came on. There will be a vaccine. It may not happen until 2021, but it is coming. And the new normal will become normal. It's the resilience that we have as global citizens of this world. And there may be one more slide. Nope, that's it. So Sunny, Terry, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Leroy. It was a very nice presentation. I think from what you discussed before is that actually one good news is that the recovery rates is increasing, and the infected number also, a number of countries are also decreasing. My son lives in Sydney, and he told me that he was laid off for 2 weeks, but then he for the 2 weeks he was unable to work, not because because there's no because he's actually work as a chef, so there's nobody is allowed to go to the, so but now it's recovering. Now the people are starting to go to the city, and then business not as usual yet, but they starting picking up in the center of the city. Okay, let me now go to the next speaker, Pak Diki Indrawan. Pak Diki is lecturer of IPB School of Business for the past 13 years. He was born in Samarinda, East Kalimantan. I've been there also, Samarinda. I used to live there for 7 years. He was born in 17th of December, 1974. Pak Diki is an expert in health economy, strategic management, value chain governance, and supply chain, also marketing management. Pak Diki married with 3 children and currently lives in Bogor. In addition to a lecturer, he's currently also a team member of data preparation and analysis of COVID-19 in the coordinating minister of Human Development and Culture, PMK, Menko PMK. Prior to lecturing IPB, Pak Diki was a businessman, also entrepreneur. But as an academia, Pak Diki has published many articles, done many research projects, and has written and published in both journals, both in Indonesia and overseas. He is currently working on 2 multi-year research projects. Number 1 is realization of higher value added of agricultural products in Asian countries through development of effective cold chain. This is a project from Economic Research Institute for Asian and East Asia. The second project that he is working now is called Smart in AG. Smart in AG is smart technology in agriculture, working with Wageningen University and IPB. This is 4.0 industry and agriculture. Pak Diki obtained his degree in agriculture economy and resources from IPB. Also, he obtained S2 management, magister management from IPB. then attended an executive program in Maastricht School of Management, Netherlands. Also, he earned PhD degree in business economics, focusing on One Health Economic from Wageningen University and Research Center, the Netherlands. Without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Pak Diki, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Sony. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Selamat pagi. Selamat malam buat Pak Leroy di United States. First of all, I also would like to thank Pak Sony for inviting me, Bu Terry, and also Pak Suyanto. And also my regards to Pak Prof. Indra Jaya for the recommendations that he gave to Pak Sony as well. Well, I would like to mention that my presentation is basically in line to what Mr. Leroy already mentions, is about the social impact of COVID-19. I would like to share my presentations. Wait for a minute. Okay. Well, as you know, that we are already facing the biggest problems, I think, within the centuries about the pandemics. And also in Indonesia, we are now in the end of the policy, whether we would like to continue the partial lockdown, the restrictions, the movement restrictions. But we would like to know whether this policy has an impact to the social life, to the business, to the economics. And for that, I would like to start with the idea that, well, social environment is one of the influence factors that determine business. We should think that if your social environment suffers, then your business faces threat in the short run and the long run. Without mitigations, business and economics will suffer as well. So this is just sort of perspective of the business academics. But this is also important to think that, well, without thinking, sorry, whether you see my slides yet or not.
Yeah, we're good, Dickie. We can see.
Yeah, it's
okay, great. And also regarding to this, we also need to understand that social environment determines the public health, but also this determines your business and economics, because the relations of the social environment and the health lies in the business landscapes, which is we need to understand the business resource in finding employees is regarding their health as well. If we seek the competent people, competent persons, we need to ensure that their social environment gives health to their living environment as well. Without health, then you will have problems. In the same times, if we look at more broader context, health also means that you will operate in the business market. Your business will face different market, because if your social environment suffers from illness, they will have no productivity, which means there will be no one in the market can buy your product as well. So we need to think that this is in the bigger picture as well. This is in line to what Leroy has already mentioned, that we are facing this threat as well. And currently, why the pandemics become higher interest for everyone? Because the economy is growing, and also at the same time, ICT is growing. So health issues and ICT are the new life changers. What we are facing right now is, well, you can see the people really care about the information about health, which probably due to the ICT. People now in the social media, they have their phones, they can access website and everything. But in the same times, people start to care more about masker, hand sanitizer, washings, and a healthy life. Also, I think in my research, current research, we also see the shifting in the consumptions. People start to eat more healthy because they were informed that the only way to get away from COVID-19 is to increase your immunity. So this is one of the measures that they have. And we can also think more. What we are facing right now is not only about the economics, but of course, the economics, it's the bigger problems that people think, because the health and economics and social is related right now. How we can see that, because the health and economics and social is related right now. We can see and let's think that once more, what Indonesia face right now is the third times that we are facing the critical inflection point. We are impacted by global problems, which is now higher. And also social problems such as poverty is potentially higher than the previous crisis. And we think that's why this is happening. Compared to other diseases, we are facing more problems because people are now more aware, which gave more uncertainty to the business and economics. And for sure, business, it creates more problems compared to other diseases, including the SARS, which Okay, so that's what we're facing right now. So let's see what is the crisis and what life after pandemics. Let's see that we need to connect the problems. What we're facing right now, there are still no vaccines. There are still no cure. So the curations relies on how the doctors and nurses taking care, support the life of the patients. And also what create more problems, this uncertainty whether these vaccines and cure will soon be introduced to the market or to the society. And the other problems that also uncertain whether the second wave will be happening soon. Because what we learned from the pandemics, from Spanish flu, the second wave is always higher. It creates more and bigger problems. And also, I think earlier in the discussions with Leroy, we spoke about there's always be disease. And also let's think that this disease will not immediately remove. There will always be a disease seasonality, like flu. We always having flu times to times. And every years we have certainly different types of disease outbreaks, which is from pandemic is become endemic. So there still will be uncertainty. And right now, what we think is important is let's see what the expected impact in the short run. What happened now, we are facing home isolation, social distancing. To the economics problems create from less spending because of that. And people start to change their behaviors, change their spending behavior. And also in the global context, they create export and import halted, which create economic disruptions. In the long run, we can see that if we could not find cure and medications, and there will be no vaccine at all, probably like the SARS-CoV-1 in 2001 that happening, the people start to create vaccine, but apparently without the government funding, and the people start to think, oh, we're not really relies on vaccine, just leave as it is. The vaccines never goes to the market. So there will be more virus transmissions. And it means also with this kind of types of virus, there will be more restrictions. And then sometimes, if we're talking about business, it's what we call the end of globalization. For sure, all of this, in the short run and long run, will create a social impact. What is social impact? Let's think about what we call right now about the normal, the new normal. What life look after pandemic, life would be about what you call it normal. When we talk about old normal and the new normal, there's always uncertainty. And according to Harvard studies, probably we will have social distancing until 2022 to manage COVID-19. And in the old normal, there already impact on the social inclusions, inequality, and also the poverty reduction. And let's think that what happened right now, the pressures happening to business and economics will create more impact on the social inclusions, equality, and poverty reduction. Let's reflect on the notion of normal life, especially for the people that basically are impacted. In the old normal, what is really normal actually, especially for these people? Whether they have health insurance, whether they have medical access, this also create actually a problem of health, which also impacting the social environment for business and economics. And if we talk about the business, whether this also normal for a small, medium enterprise, whether this is normal about the market access and capital access, while now we're talking about the new normal, there will be more pressure to the economics, whether they can have the health insurance, whether they can have the market access, capital access, that's also a question mark. So let's talk about the new normal scenario. If we found medications or vaccines by the end of this year, well, we can say that, well, the business can recover. But if no, they will facing the second scenario, which means without travel restrictions, without trade war, then we will have short-term recession for sure. That's second scenario. It will create more scars, but the recovery, even it's not as fast as the first scenario, it can happen soon, but still people are affected. But if we look at the third scenario, there's no vaccines, there are trade restrictions, there are trade wars, we will facing long-term recessions, which means we are having the third scenario of the normal. This is the worst case scenario, which means that it will be deglobalization, inward-looking, restoring protectionist. There will be negative demand, negative supply, cash deficit, hyperinflation will happen. So this is what we are facing. We don't know yet which one will be, but we of course will always hoping for the best one, the easiest one. But let me remind you, there's always uncertainty about this. And if we talk about the social impact mitigations, it's similar like what Mr. Leroy mentioned. We talk about the resilience. In the new normals, we talk about the social inclusion as well, equality, poverty reduction as well. Why? Because they are also important for business. And for countries with weak social and labor protection, like here in Indonesia, we are facing a greater increase in inequality and incomes and access to opportunity, and as well as the more protected and deeper social and economic impact, with more people pushed into poverty. So what is the mitigation? The only mitigation is to enhance resilience. So let me like to suggest or promote the mitigation frameworks. First of all, I would like to remind you before talking about more mitigation to have people resilience, social resilience. There are no one fit for all strategy. There will be no one fit strategy for all problems. So let's think that what we have to do, we are trying to mitigate, why, when, and how. This is the small framework that I would like to propose in this discussion. First, let's think that social impacts, what we are facing now, there are two that we need to mitigate: health shocks and economic shocks. What happened right now, because of the COVID-19, we are facing health shocks. People are more scared due to that, and people more care to the transmission. People not really sure what's happening. And due to the ICT, to social media, people are more afraid. So the health shocks create more social impacts. In the same times, like in the first presentations by Mr. Leroy, we are facing economic shock, which create food loss. It's also create a social impact. Now, not only to the men who work, the lady who work, but also to the education, social life. What we can also see what happened is, like in China, the number of divorce is increasing as well due to the lockdown and everything. So what happened is we are facing a social impact. And that's what we need to address. And also who that we are aiming to, who is the target. Let's see that we cannot solve for everyone, especially for the countries like Indonesia, where we have limited budget and everything, but we need to clusterize. We need to categorize who has the most impact in health, who has the most impact in economics. So we can divide them to the low, medium, and high, and create a matrix which we need to ensure that people are classified to this, and the people who are impacted highly in health and highly in economics, they are critically affected by these problems, which need an urgency from us. And the people who probably have low impact in health and also low impact in economics, they are very low. So we need to also include them, especially for those who are already socially infected from the old normal. So in the new normal, we need to cluster people, because for sure people would like to have more health, but we need to strategize and prioritize who will be mitigated. And why? For sure, people who are impacted highly in health and highly in economics, like what Mr. Leroy presented earlier, they will also create social unrest. And especially if they are very high and critically social unrest, and if the numbers of the people that has the impact on health and also the economics are higher numbers in our countries, on other countries as well, it creates more problems. So it will be bad for business. And if there are only social dissatisfactions, we are also facing the same problems with the social unrest as well, because it creates bad environment for business. No one can survive with this type of problems. That's why we need to address the problem sooner. And then when this is what we need to think of. It's very urgent if the health impact is very high and also the economic impact is very high. And well, I will not say that now is not that very urgent, that's also the urgent, but because of the critical social unrest, we need to do it right now without any further delays. But now we are facing the problems that which ones that that we are really facing, because some of us probably think that, well, in Indonesia, well, probably the health impact is mediums or the economic impacts probably mediums. So we are thinking about the gradual progress. That's what we are facing right now with these restrictions, with the movement restriction, mobility restriction. We think about the gradual process. But I don't know whether the numbers was right, the data is right, but we need to think these are the spectrum that we are facing right now. So let's talk about how. So socially, this is what already happened. We have the health-related shocks. We already have the economic shocks. So what we are facing right now, we already have the social distancing. We have social healthcare, and sometimes we have problems as well. But also, like I think the host mentioned earlier, many governments, many countries provide social protection, social health insurance to countermeasure this problem as well. But is that enough? For sure, if we look at the individual's measure, household, self-isolation, hygiene, nutrition, also important. That's what happened right now. But can you ensure that can be delivered to your door as well? Because like Mr. Leroy mentioned earlier, there are global supply chain disruption as well. So there will be a problem for sure. And talking about this economic and business, how we can measures, we can counter measures these problems. We need to think that health impacts and economics impact have different type of strategy. For the high impacts and also for the high economic impact, we need to reformat everything, especially in the social financings. How we do that? And also that's the biggest question that we are facing right now. And also if we are talking about the reforms, how we can do that? And of course, if the problem of health is quite low and the economic is quite low, we only take we can take small measures. We can always remedy. We can always recover the systems. But let's look at the bigger pictures that what we are facing right now is bigger than we expected, because without the social financings, the government and also the business could not survive. And how we're talking about the economic and finance. Of course, it's social financings in the reformat. We're talking about fiscal and monetary policies. And also in the same times, we're talking about what I would like to mention, social capital market. We need to have the social investment, social stock exchange, venture philanthropy funds. And also, of course, we need to more advocations on social investment and funding consultancy as well as in the research strategy. If we reset everything, then we need to also include what we already mentioned, a national social safety net. It's for everyone. But what we're facing right now is probably similar like reforms, which is selected social safety nets. But we need also to think whether the social capital market need to be exist. Social investment, the venture philanthropy funds, it's also need to be managed. Like what happened right now, a lot of people get out and help people who in needs, people are socially affected, but it's in short terms. In the long terms, we need to have the more venture philanthropy funds as well. Why? I would like to address later on in the next slide. And the remedy, we're talking about the fiscal policies, and also on the probably in small terms, we always look at probably the possibilities of crowdfunding. But let's see what happened in the business sectors. This is something that need to be changed. Business for social impact. Due to this crisis, we need to reimagination, we need to recreate the new landscape of business. Now, with these health problems, people need to think whether the business can affect not only health, but also the economics, but also their social impact. So in these very, very problematic things, we need to reformat the business sectors with the mindset of social wealth, social business idea, and also probably social enterprise. In the research format as mitigations, we are looking at the business foresight. We still need to think what happened in the future. And of course, we need the social business idea and also social enterprises. But if we look at the reforms, what happened right now is a business scenario. People trying to postpone the payment, people trying to renegotiate the supply chains and try to create a flexible working system to the partner, to the supply chains, also to the markets. That's what happened. But if you facing the remedy scenario, the remedy strategy, probably you only need to recover trust from your customer and also the suppliers, and also only increase social responsibility. Well, probably also corporate shared value. But if we look at bigger pictures with these uncertainties, probably what we are facing is more from reform reset to reformat. And what I would like to address is government opportunity. This is a government opportunity to drive the business sectors and to drive the business actors to be more inclusive in their businesses. And also business actor can see this as an opportunity to drive their future as well. That's what I would like to address in the mitigation. And this is the proposal that we need to discuss, how to reduce the social impacts in the long run and how it can reduce the poverty as well. As in conclusions, I would like to address that, well, first of all, we need to outmaneuver the uncertainty. We're facing health and economic shocks. And we need to also think that right now, every business is a health business. People start to care more about health. People are afraid of touching and everything. And people start to create more different devices to prevent them from touching the doors and probably a lot of stuff. And this need to be something that resolve current problem and drive the future. And also what we need to think is what is new normal. What let's define not only in the terms of health, not only in the terms of economics, but combine both. And we need to adjust them to the needs of people. And also we need to navigate the social impact mitigations towards resilience. I think that's much more important. And lastly, I would like to address what we need actually to mitigate everything and to create this resilience is to have a more responsible leadership from the government and also from the business sectors. We need to lead it with with compassion. We need to care for workforce and community, and it's become bigger than the other times of the centuries. It's more essential than ever. Well, I would like to address the last quotes from Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. So in this case, I think personally that as a businessman, we need to think like a virus itself. Virus is vulnerable, actually. It can be easily vanished, but how they are survive, it's because they are adaptive to changes. So as a business actors, as an academics, as a people, and it's also as a country, let's think that we need to adapt more to the problems and survive. I think that's my remarks. Thank you, Pak Sony.
Thank you, Pak Diki. It was very nice. It was very detailed and very, how do I call it? Future. You've done a lot of mitigation and which I think it's quite important here. Also, you have touched about new normal and about responsible leadership and all that. We've discussed also about there was an inflection of the economy, like 3 times of inflection, and which I think is it is important for us to understand that. Before we go into Q&A, I'd like to invite Jaya to Indra. If you can just give your overview and your response to the 2 speakers, please.
Thank you very much, Pak Sony, for the opportunity to give a response. First, I would like to thank our 2 speakers, Pak Leroy and Pak Diki, for an excellent presentation and overview of the whole problems that we are facing now related to this COVID. Actually, I was really impressed about how this pandemics really hit our society, and it is clearly shown. That this our world of ours is very interconnected, and but the sad thing is that our response is not as global as we should be, but we tend to respond this more in terms of locals, just a local response. And even inside of the country itself, sometimes because of lack of leadership, there is no coherent response. So once you have this global pandemics, but on the other side, you have a very localized response, and this is very sad. And maybe I think about it. Maybe we should. I don't know. Should we really overhaul our social interaction system? I mean, between a nation, or even within a society inside of the country, because as I said, we are lack of coherent response together facing this massive pandemic. And the second comment I would like to say is that this thing is start as a health issue, and actually it's not really a surprise, because people have talked about this pandemic, the incoming pandemics, like 10 or 20 years ago, that it will happen. But it seems that our health system are really not well equipped. They are not really ready to face this situation. So maybe we should think about again whether we really should overhaul again our health system, so it could respond more appropriately when we face this kind of pandemic. So those two things that really makes the situation in terms of the socioeconomic impacts are getting worse, because we are not be able to handle this, to mitigate this as early as possible. So in the case of Indonesia, I don't know much about US, but I just reading from the news. But it looks to me in US is much more worse than us. Maybe because we are an island country, or I don't know, or maybe a climate. It is still a big uncertain. But I think one thing for sure is that during this time, really to come up with effective mitigation, I think the key issue here is to get to collect the quality data, all kind of data related to these pandemics, not only socioeconomics or health, but also the economy, to get this good quality data, so that we can make a proper response, more quantitative response to really solve the problems. For example, since I'm familiar with, for example, from a fisheries aspect, we have problems of in terms of supply chains, but we cannot pinpoint exactly where it is, or how big is the problems in each of those nodes in the supply chains. Now, this is things that I think we should really get the data, the quality data. And the second one is our reporting system. To improve our reporting system, how can we make a good reporting system with the available technology, with this real-time data coming in? How we could make use of that technology to really help us in making a decision process day by day. Yeah, because this is the problem that I think we should address day by day. It's not just one time and then let it go, but we maybe have to modify or change a little bit our strategy. But the only way to do that is if we have a good, I say, quality data and reporting system to come up with effective strategy. I think maybe that's my brief comment, and I thank you again for a very good presentation. I learned a lot from Roy and Dicky presentation. Thank you very much, Pak Sony, for giving me the opportunity to give a brief comment.
Thank you, Prof. Indra. It's a good response to the speakers. And I'd like to give the time to the audience. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions to our speakers, Pak Leroy and Pak Diki, and also to Professor Indra. So if you have any question, you can just unmute your speaker and then you can say it to our speakers. Anybody?
Sonny, there's some questions in the chat as well.
Yes, that's right. There's a questions raised by Pak Taufik. Pak Taufik, questions for Pak Leroy. What is the benefit of early warning, early detection policy concerning with the COVID-19 impact in the world? Would you like to answer that?
Let me just look at it from the perspective of what I've seen happen in the U.S. Look, the U.S. probably were aware of this virus starting, and we had early warnings that may not have been addressed immediately. However, if you look at where the first case broke out in the state of Washington, a second case broke out in the state of Arizona, and I think the third case was in California, all on the West Coast, and then finally New York that came in from Europe. While there may not have been an early warning system per se, if you look at the data from California, New York, and Washington, they were very, very quick to respond. They were very, very quick to put in prevention measures and protocols in place. Yes, the hospital systems were overwhelmed because the virus turned out to be extremely contagious and very easily spread. So I think my answer is more, not so much as an early warning system as it is the ability of the country or the states in the US, for example, to respond to what became very clear a global pandemic. And at the same time, because we are the US, I go back to one of my slides that said, who me? I'm too young, I can't get this. I remember very clearly in the US, and I spent a lot of time in Florida, as Sonny mentioned, when I was growing up. The virus hit the US at the same time spring break at the universities. And spring break, as Sonny knows, studying in Ohio, was a time for students to head off in the northern part of the country to the southern part of the country where it's nice and warm. And if you looked at the pictures in the TV, if you saw them, the beaches of Florida, the beaches of southern Georgia, where thousands and thousands of students were gathering without any protection whatsoever, without any social distancing whatsoever, yet the warning was already there. And sure enough, within 2 weeks to a month, as those kids started returning back to their universities, the incidence of the virus started to spike. So I don't know, Dickie, if you have a more logical approach to the early warning system, but that certainly was our experience in the US.
Okay. Is there any other question? If you don't want to mention it, you can also write it in the chat room.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. I am Esti Fuji Hastuti. Thank you for the speaker this day. Because this pandemic COVID-19, there is a worry for most people about future life. The first is unemployment, that is economic factor, and the second is healthy life. And this was covered by Mr. Dicky. This is a dilemma. Yeah. So what? I want to question the optimal condition. Seperti apa itu nanti? The changes. What's for? I suggest. Sederhana aja, that is need develop to home industry, that is the usaha kecil menengah, ya, because the first reason is home industry lebih cenderung kepada mengikuti ini kebijakan PSBB, and the second the capital is so small, and if this dijalankan, maka ini akan mencakup banyak orang. Jadi mungkin itu, tapi nggak tahu apakah itu bisa diterapkan. Mungkin perlu kajian lebih lanjut. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you want to answer that? There are also people, audience, who send me questions in my WhatsApp. From Rizky Erdian. The question is, why death number because of COVID-19 is so high in USA? That's a question to Leroy. And then one is, what the measures that have been taken by USA government to minimize the COVID-19 impact? Number two. Number three is, what the impacts of this pandemic to Freeport business? I think this three question is directed to you, Leroy. Another question from Gusti Ale Yusuf. It's in Bahasa Indonesia, so let me just read it in Bahasa. Sebaiknya seperti apa yang harus dilakukan pemerintah Indonesia, khususnya dalam menyusun protokol mitigasi bencana pandemi seperti sekarang ini? Maybe Pak Diki can answer that. And also, perbedaan yang sangat jelas antara new normal dengan herd immunity. Karena sepertinya secara garis besar sama seperti manusianya yang diminta adaptasi dengan virusnya. Another question is from Agus Hidayat. This question is directed to Pak Diki. Dalam rangka reform sesuatu, misalnya usaha apalagi UKM, sangat butuh waktu dan energi. Sehingga belum sampai sudah kelelahan. Kira-kira peran siapa yang bisa membantu hal tersebut? So let's answer that questions, and there are more questions coming. So I'd like to give this opportunity, time to Leroy first, then Pak Diki, and probably if Professor Indra would like to add, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunny. Let me start with, I think it was Hesti's comment about home industry kecil di rumah tangga.
Yes. Yeah.
Look, as I will speak, this one I will make a very short answer, and I'm sure Dickie has a much better, more academic answer that is more appropriate. Whenever in the US, and I won't speak for Indonesia, I'll leave that to Dickie. In the US, when we are challenged as a people, whether it's a health challenge like this, or whether it's a technology challenge in the past, we are great innovators. And I am certain that we will innovate in this crisis of COVID as well. Is a solution in the US, for example, home industry? Maybe. I mean, you look at the way small businesses have grown. Small businesses are actually, they employ more people than big businesses in the US. So I think there's a lot of hope that innovation will continue to thrive in the US and generate employment for households that will at the same time reduce the interactions between people, et cetera. And a lot of this will be facilitated by ICT, of course, and IT. As far as the questions in the US, one of the reasons the cases are so high in the US, because Americans are so free-spirited, I think, that we, in the case, I gave the example of students on break, kids between the ages of 18 and 24 years old, who at the end of winter semester or during the spring break, they head off to the south where the sun is shining and where all their friends are and they can have a great time. And they could not care less about whether they are going to get the virus or spread the virus to somebody else. And that certainly contributed to the spikes. And as I said in my presentation, as tragic as it is, the unrest as a result of the killing of George Floyd 9 days ago, people gathered, but they gathered under protocol. They were wearing masks in general, but not everybody. So there is a chance that there will be a spike again in the US as well. So the reason why we are so high in the US, now approaching 2 million cases, is because we are so social and we are so outgoing and interacting with our fellow colleagues. The mitigation measures are what's happening in New York and other states that work. You look at Hawaii, there's a travel ban in Hawaii. If you were to fly into Hawaii tomorrow, you would have to self-isolate for 14 days. You can't go anywhere for 14 days. And they monitor, the state of Hawaii will monitor all of your actions. You cannot go out and buy food. You cannot go out to a drive-in and pick up a McDonald's. You have to stay home and have people deliver things to you for 14 days until you've passed the quarantine period. And the impact on the business at Freeport, if we look at the press that is coming out, and you see the press all the time, Histi in Indonesia, where we, as I mentioned in my presentation, Freeport now has 2 PCR machines, one in Kuala Kencana, one in Tembagapura. Those machines are not only testing Freeport employees, but they are testing the community people living in and around Mimika, and they are testing the community people in and around kabupaten that are tetangga to Mimika. So I think that the mitigation efforts that have been done by PT Freeport have been exemplary. They've been extremely rigorous, and the results have been demonstrated through the very, very low numbers in deaths and the very, very high recovery rate that we're seeing on a weekly basis. So that's it from me. Sunny, thanks.
Okay, next, maybe Pak Diki. Answer.
Okay, thank you very much for all the questions. I probably will sum up it all the question to the same clusters. Well, first of all, so, the question mostly addressed to what is the new normal, and whether the new normal that the government tried to address is also the same with herd immunity. Well, this is like the earliest comment talking about dilemma. I don't think the government also would like to sacrifice people because the economic and the health is basically correlated. The problem is the uncertainty of the answers. The medical answer is very uncertain right now. So what is best is to refigure what is the futures, what we need to reform, what we need to reimaginations, what is the futures. And the new normal is not always about the economics, not always about the number of the dead people, but we need to think how we do our social life. Because like Leroy said, what happened in the United States is because of free spirit, people are very socialized. It's affected the health and also affecting the business eventually. This is what we need to think of. We need to agree on something. Because what happened, I give you an example. During the Idul Fitri, a week ago, we are still in the mobility restrictions. No one should go outside. But what happened if in the social norms, like the grandfathers and also the grandchildren call each other, and the grandfathers feels or felt this is probably the last Idul Fitri they will face. And immediately he will call his sons or his daughters, come over. They are in different cities. That's what happens. It's social norms exist. That's why we talk, not even they're already having a video conference, video calls, but people still trying to attract, comes, probably this is my last time. So what happened if people travel? This is something that we need to agree upon. This is not always about economics. This is not about health. This is not about just virus. We're talking about actually it's human crisis. Like in my first presentation, we're talking about human crisis. We are talking resetting everything, and fortunately, also in the same time in the business sector, this is to address the questions about the home industry and also how the small industry can survive. Actually, now people care less about the artificial business. For instance, no one really cares to go to Starbucks again because they pay higher for the environments and everything, but now they are enjoying coffee by buying a 1 liter coffee at their homes. So the cost of the artificial business are reducing. So this is a good opportunity for the small industry to compete. I saw many cases in Indonesia, a lot of coffee shops, they cannot open because of the mobility restrictions. And this is what happening. And more small businesses having and gaining their markets due to this crisis. Of course, not all sectors. And I need to take notes. Most of the sectors related to the food and beverages, they can shift and reimaginations exist for them. But probably for the fashion industry, the small, medium enterprise in the fashion industry facing problems because now people care less about their fashions. They only look at the basics. So this is something that also need to think of. Of course, that's why I also propose in the my presentations, we need to also to have a social investment in the business ID, because for instance, the number of people that going to the wedding in Indonesia usually around 2,000, 3,000 is different from people in Europe, only 10 or 15 people. Catering business, wedding business going down because of this. I think the last couple of months, the people are suffering and many people get it off. And at the same time, if we think about the new normal, people start to think about the new social life. Probably in Indonesia, the wedding will not be the same. Not many people will attend 2,000 and 3,000. You need to think of how the business needs to survive. Like in my last remarks, I mentioned that business and a small business should act like virus. We are vulnerable to the situations, but we need to think smart. Of course, like the questions raised that, well, small business can be exhausted to reforms, to change their business. I think the most problematic from the small business is not the imaginations, but the comfort zones. Because I experienced, I saw many small businesses, they are staying in the comfort zone because first, if you try to increase your business, you need to taking care of more people. You need taking care of more problems in finance. You need taking care of more market and customers, which probably they're already enjoying what they have right now, which also create, well, if I try to increase and shift to a new social business life, I will have problems because, well, I'm enjoying what I already have right now. I think in most cases, that's what happened. I think Leroy also having the same experience, try to create social inclusive for many small and medium enterprises, farmers and everything, because the only things I'm already happy with this. So this is something that they need to be addressed, because I think the productivity basically there can be increased, but if they are not thinking forward, they are not trying to survive or responsive to change, they will be vanished. I think that's my remarks. Thank you, Pak Sony.
Thank you. There are other 3 questions at the chat room, which we can discuss it now. First is from Ibu Dwi Andayani. What is your opinion about the managerial of COVID-19 in Indonesia as long as you see till now? This is good enough or not so bad? Next question is from Pak Miswan Kuma. I have attended many seminars how to overcome COVID-19. The point is the same, where COVID-19 destroying our economy. My opinion, as stated by Professor Indra, the USA is a developed country and applies a lockdown system, but has many due to COVID-19 compared to Indonesia. My question is, why don't we just live it as usual human life? Our economy is safe. What do you think? And the other one from Christine Violin to Pak Diki, what is best action in Indonesia for survival, small, medium, and management face up to pandemic COVID-19? And to Mr. Leroy, in America, how to progress productivity SMEs face up to pandemic COVID-19? Maybe we can discuss these 3 questions.
Dickie, maybe you go first.
Okay, thank you, Leroy. Because the first questions was raised to you, I will not answer whether the manager of COVID-19 in Indonesia good or bad. I will leave that to Mr. Leroy. But I will address to Ms. Wan Gomandi regarding whether we should just leave this problem as just a usual human life. People born and die anyway. I think that the main point, and also things we need to save economic. Well, like in my presentation, I mentioned that it cannot be separated actually, because it's about social life, it's about business environment as well. If people are getting died, people are afraid, and the economic also cannot be the same. Especially during these times, people are now more aware of health. Previously, people don't care at all. Why? Because of AI, people now have more information. I think that's the difference. And people cannot ignore the problems at all. Even we are trying to make our new normal become normal again like the previous, it will never be the same because people change. Some people may be still ignorance, yes, probably. This always happen in any other cases, but many people are aware and try to create a difference. And this is what happened. So to save economics, like I mentioned earlier, we need to reimagine. We need to create what is the new business, what is the social life in the next life, not next life, the next years. The current is not suitable anymore. We need to survive. Of course, this is also address the last questions. What is the best actions in Indonesia for SME to survive? Of course, the government need to create the best environment for all businesses, including the small, medium enterprises, and more focused in the social investment right now. Because what I mentioned about the social businesses, previously people only care about profit, but now the businesses need to care about health. For instance, you got message from the online drivers, online delivery, that you can just put 1 meters the package, so there will be no contact at all. It's some things that you need to imagination. The next businesses. So change, adaptive to change, responsive to change. It's more important right now, and do not expect it will be back to the previous normal again. It will be always changed. Actually, if we look back for maybe 100 and 200 years back, we always change actually, but we never say every changes it's a new normal. We just change, we just adaptive. But these new notions come up right now because of actually the industry 4.0, and also now because of the pandemic, and people start to talk a lot about the new normal. But actually, if we look at the Japan society 5.0, people already thinks ahead in the future. I think also back in 1970, 1960, if we look at the cartoons movie from United States, they already create different stories about what is life in the future, which I think most of us aiming to that. I think that the difference is whether we would like to accept that and be responsive, and also in terms of businesses, people will less involved in productions, probably robot will be involved, but in the same times, it creates new opportunity. I think people are smart actually. People are adaptive to change, but it's depend on their willingness. I think that's the key. If they're willing to change, we are changed. I think I would like to answer like that, and I will leave it the rest to Leroy. Please, Leroy.
Dickie, thank you. I was hoping you would answer Dwi's question about how has Indonesia managed the COVID pandemic. Look, it's not, I'm not there. If I were living in Indonesia again, if I were working and walking and experiencing Jakarta and other areas in Indonesia, I would be better able to make an assessment. Let me tell you my assessment of the US. I think that at the national level, and this does not make a difference whether I'm a party Democrat or a party Republican, I think the national leadership could have been more, it could have been more reactive quicker. What has, in the US, as now with decentralization in Indonesia, all of our governors have authority to make decisions. And if you look in the US on a state-by-state basis, the states that reacted early, you look at Washington, you look at California, you look at New York, you look at Hawaii, and other states that took action, preventative action, mitigation actions very, very early in February and March. Our curves are going down. You look at Hawaii, I don't think we've had a new case or only 1 or 2 cases, even though the population is very low over the last few days. And the deaths have been very, very low. Governors govern, and they govern well. And I think that on an individual basis, you have some governors that have taken good, quick, strong action, and other governors that have been a little bit less reactive and a little bit slower to react. And that's just what happens in the US because we've got 50 different governors with 50 different policies on how they want to address the COVID situation. As far as what basically Ms. Wanguma's question was to me, why is it that some do well and some don't do well? I read a very interesting article, and I'm sorry I do not have the link now, but you can Google Sweden versus Germany's response to COVID-19. And the reason it's Sweden and Germany is because they have taken completely the opposite approaches for addressing COVID-19. Sweden was, if you're over, I think it's 65 or 70 years old, you stay home. As far as everybody else, life is normal. That's why when you see pictures of people in Sweden, they're outside drinking coffee with their friends, they're walking around the town. They are practicing social distancing, but it's up to the individual people. that is a decision that they made, which I think medically, and I don't know, Dickie, you may know better than I, medically it was get more and more people exposed, because then they build up the antigens and the chances of getting a flu-like COVID in the future is reduced. But what has happened, if you compare Sweden to Norway and Denmark, their growth rate of positive cases is higher, and the deaths per, say, 1,000 people population is higher. But that's a decision that they made, and their economy did not suffer. The economics remained relatively strong. Germany took the other approach, which, similar to the US, was a lot of lockdown, a lot of travel restrictions, a lot of social distancing restrictions, mandatory mask wearing, et cetera, et cetera. This is a great example of two cases that took two completely different approaches to their mitigation of COVID-19. I do not know what Sweden is today. I was reading this article about a month ago, so I'm not sure anymore. Likewise with Germany. As far as SMEs, small scale industries in the US, look, they're going to be operating in a new normal. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Innovation is the mother of invention, so to speak. Where I look at the amount of businesses that have been developed as a result of COVID, through apps, through the delivery of services. Those are still doing very well. And I think that is probably what will be a new normal in the US, relying more and more on our phones, relying more and more on our laptops to get services, or doing what we're doing today, having 100, 200 people in a call where I'm only seeing 5 or 6 people, yet there's hundreds of people out there listening to what it is that we are saying. That's very, very different than being in an audience where you have physical direct contact with 100 or 200 people in the audience. So we will adjust, and we will come out better at some point in the hopefully near future than we are today. But I feel very good about SMEs. My son-in-law has a small business in Florida. My son has a small business in New Mexico. They are struggling, but they are surviving, and they are adjusting to this new normal.
Okay, thank you, Pak Leroy and Pak Diki. I think we have 7 minutes to go before we close this webinar. But before that, I'd like to give Professor Indra maybe 2 or 3 minutes response to this before we close the webinar.
Thank you, Pak Sony. I just want to comment about different country with a different response, get a different result. I think it's very true what Leroy mentioned, that there is country using what we may call like a textbook approach. You are using all this methodology of how to combat this pandemic using this known science approach, while other countries use totally against or different with that approach. And the result seems like, you know, whatever approach you take, it seems like it's not really clear patterns, you know, because it seems to me vary from one country to another. And because this is mostly also related to the social behavior of the people, so it's very difficult to predict. But one thing I just read this morning, that actually the casual fatality rate, of this virus, it's quite not really damaging or not really big, but they tend to be smaller. But and then if you have a good immune system, or you have a good antibody, then very likely that you are survive from that from this virus. And then to get this good antibody, you can get it to increase the antibody. You can get it from nutritious food, but also one thing that we should remember. But also you can get boost. You can get this antibody from being happy, where your brain can be triggered. I don't know what is it that your brain can trigger what they call some kind of a neurotransmitter, which really jack up your immune system that makes you happy. Maybe this is the case with Indonesia, because if you look at comparing Indonesia with the US, for example, they are the same order of magnitude in terms of the population. 350 million US, we are 270 millions, and we are very crowded. But when you compare with the fatality, we only now around 2,000, 2,000, and compared to United States, 100,000 is like 100 times more. Maybe because Indonesian are, I don't know, we are very happy people, something like that. So it's our immune system are very good. So when we get this virus, we are not, in terms of fatality, we're still very low. But there's so many questions that still unanswered. But hopefully, I think as we go through this pandemic, and we get more and more information, maybe we will get that answer by the end of this year. What actually happens to us. Yeah. So hopefully with all these social distancing and all the way we, if we don't get too depressed, maybe we are fine. Thank you very much. That's my last comment.
Thank you, Prof. Indra. We still have a number of questions here, but unfortunately we don't have time. We are running out of time. We have 3 more minutes here. I think it's going to we're going to close this webinar. I just want to say thank you to all the speakers, Leroy, Pak Diki, and also our guest, Pak Professor Indra Jaya, in this webinar. I think it's been really nice. It's been very, very thought-provoking, and very interesting issues have been raised. It seems like in the going forward, we have new life, new normal that we need to adjust to our life, and it seems like there's no other way other than adjusting our life to the new life, new normal. I'm not going to conclude this webinar because we have there are many issues that we have discussed and we have solved, and it is now. I like to hand it over to Pak Yanto to close the seminar. Thank you, everybody. Pak Yanto? Is Pak Yanto there?
Hello.
Ya, Pak Yanto.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hari Miarsono, PhD, and Pak Leroy Hollenberg. Thank you for your information and science to all participants in seminar. And then Pak Diki, PhD, thank you. Then Prof. Indra Jaya. I think the seminar is very good for information to new normal. Jadi informasi sangat bagus untuk kondisi persiapan kita new normal. Kampus IPWIJA kuliah daring sampai dengan tanggal 13 Juni sambil menunggu pengumuman resmi dari pemerintah apakah sebaiknya nanti kita lanjut kuliah daring online atau nanti kuliahnya offline dalam arti onsite di kelas. Jadi sebagai informasi Bapak Ibu, terima kasih kepada seluruh pembicara. Pak Roy, terima kasih, sangat luar biasa. Selamat malam. Jadi di Amerika sudah malam. Ya, yeah. I think Pak Sony for countries, ya, China, India, USA, and Indonesia is many people, ya, many people for countries to how to new normal life. ya, bagaimana menghadapi hidup baru terkait dengan pasca COVID ini. Terima kasih dengan mengucapkan alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Tadi saya nggak perlu menyimpulkan seperti kata Pak Sony tadi bahwa kita bisa menyimpulkan sendiri-sendiri dengan mengucapkan alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Dengan resmi seminar ini kita tutup. Ya, terima kasih Pak Sony, Mbak Diki, Prof. Indrajaya. Sampai berjumpa Prof. Indrajaya dan juga Pak Roy. Kapan akan datang ke Indonesia, kita bisa berjumpa di Indonesia. Terima kasih seluruh partisipan. Saya nggak sebutkan satu persatu Pak Sony, karena ada dari seluruh Indonesia ini Pak, ada dari Palembang ya, Sumatera Selatan, Jawa Timur, Jawa Tengah, ya, dari Bali, bahkan ada yang dari Taiwan Pak, PhD student tadi dari ikut bergabung sampai selesai, dan juga teman-teman dari Lampung, dari Aceh, jadi banyak sekali teman-teman yang ingin mendengarkan ini, namun mohon maaf mungkin nggak bisa masuk di Zoom ini, tapi yang jelas ini sangat bermanfaat untuk kita. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you.
Foto ya Bapak Ibu.
Ya, Bapak Ibu bisa jangan foto dulu, bisa foto dulu.
Foto dulu.
Ya. Menampilkan video masing-masing.
Foto dulu boleh.
Ya.
Foto dulu boleh.
Ya.
Foto dulu.
Dimohon menampilkan video masing-masing Bapak Ibu.
Saya kasih.
Menampilkan video masing-masing.
Silakan
Pak Rahmat, Pak Rasipan, Pak Budi Santoso, Pak Ahmad Kuryana, Pak Meda. Untuk trik 1 ya, saya mulai. Mohon tahan. 1, ya. 1, 2, 3.
Yang kedua.
Oke. Next, yang kedua mohon ditampilkan. Oke, ya 1, 2. Ya sudah Pak.
Oke.
Bisa ya?
Ya, terima kasih banyak.
Pak Roy.
Untuk sertifikat akan kami kirim via email ya Pak.
Pak Roy.
Ibu, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leroy, Mr. Diki.
Terima kasih.
Thank you so much.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Mbak Ida.
Ya, salam sehat selalu untuk kita semua. Terima kasih banyak.
Amin.
Dari Taiwan, Ibu.
Amin.
Silitongga dari Taiwan.
Mary,
Jalan ya.
Ya, Mary. Ya, Mer.
Silitongga dari Taiwan itu dari.
Teman aku.
Oh, oke.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Ya, makasih Bu dari.
Ya, Pak Heri keren banget pakai apa Pak Heri? Udah sih.
Oke. Mohon izin kami end meeting. Terima kasih banyak. Kurang lebihnya mohon maaf.
Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sehat selalu untuk kita semua.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.